Corn tortillas, everyone. Beautiful yellow golden color. Very easy to make, actually. All you need to do is measure out a cup of plain flour, a cup of cornmeal, some salt, and a teaspoon of baking powder. Mix all those together. Just give it a little twirl. You can just bring it all together. You don't have to be overly scientific here. And then to that, we're going to add about 3 tablespoons of oil. Now, of course, you can add more or less if you like, but 3 tablespoons, I think, does the job nicely. The oil is going to keep the tortillas from drying out when you're cooking them, and then also makes the dough a little bit easier to work with. Now, once we've mixed through the oil, you saw me adding some water there. That's about slightly warm water, a little bit warm to the touch. It's just getting to that point where it's a little bit uncomfortable, but not too hot. You can see me just pouring that on my hand there. So warm water, in it goes. I didn't quite measure how much water, but what I'm going to do is I'm not going to heavily edit this video, so apologize for it being a bit long, but you'll be able to see what kind of consistency we're looking for. So that water's coming together. I minorate it there, and you see that dough now coming together, and that's roughly where you want it, and then just a little bit more water. But just be careful. You're better off adding a little bit of water at a time than adding too much and struggling with it. If you do get to that point where you've added too much water, then all you need to do is add a little bit more flour and or cornmeal there. Probably flour is a better idea unless you've added a lot of water. So we're now going to be adding water to this in about 10-20 ml hits at a time. But I think you'll probably see that if you work it a little bit, this dough is now almost there, and it doesn't actually really need any more water. And now we're just working that through. What that's going to do is the white flour in there, that's going to release the gluten, and the gluten is really going to bring everything together, bring the corn powder or the cornmeal together, and the whole thing starting to hold itself into a nice dough mixture there. You can just see there. So now I'm just going to keep kneading that for another, I'd say probably 4 to 5 more minutes until it just comes together nicely and is soft to the touch. So that dough is now starting to come together pretty nicely. I'm going to keep kneading that gently. You'll notice this is a slightly different technique to the old pizza dough. More of a downward pressure with the knuckles, flattening the dough out and then folding it back over itself. A bit different from the pushing it away from us that we would do for a bread or a pizza dough, but this dough is a bit more delicate. But you see that it's coming together quite nicely now, and the gluten in the flour is holding the corn powder or the cornmeal together quite well. This thing's almost ready now, so we're just gonna give that a bit of a shape into a ball, and we're gonna let that rest. I'm gonna wrap it up in some cling film and sit it in the fridge for you probably only need about 15-20 minutes. You don't even need to refrigerate it, but just for it to come together nicely. I left mine in the fridge for 2 hours. That's because I had to go run some errands, but you see that coming together quite nicely now. I'd like it to probably come more to room temperature, but you'll see the dough is really very easy to work with now because it's all come together quite nicely. The oil in it's helping you work it gently and easily. It's not sticking to the surface. And what I've done here is I've rolled it into a log type shape, even thickness, and then I'm going to cut 8 equal sized discs out of it. So I just like to mark it a little bit in case there's some inaccuracies, and like this one I've just adjusted that a little bit, and that gives me 8 portions with about a cup of flour and a cup of cornmeal. I'm looking to make 8 tortillas out of this, and so I've got all these little balls made. And then it's just a matter of pushing together a disc type shape out of it. And I'm going to get the old rolling pin out and just roll that out into a nice round shape, and then just on it goes onto a hot pan. Okay, so we're rolling that out into a nice round shape now. Probably no more than a couple of millimeters thick there. You don't want it too thick or it's going to be a bit chewy and difficult to fold over, which you'll see a bit later on. So that's just the way about I like it. And what we're going to do is, once that's rolled out, is get it onto a preheated pan. Now the pan doesn't need to be very hot, but it needs to be thoroughly preheated. So I've got that on low heat, but I've let it preheat for probably a good 7-8 minutes before I've put the first tortilla on there. And what you'll do is, once that's on there, you find pretty quickly it does start cooking, won't stick to the pan, and you'll be able to flip it over. And you can see there are parts of it which have browned. There's parts of it which are becoming nicely golden. So just on that heat, we're going to cook that tortilla on both sides until it's got the color, and there's the steam in there has cooked it all the way through, and it's just the way you like it. So there we go. I think it doesn't take more than perhaps a minute to cook one of these if you've got a pan nicely heated. Too hot and it'll burn, not too hot and it'll dry out. So perhaps a little bit of trial and error there, but hopefully you'll get that right. And delicious outcome. I really want you to try this. Very filling actually, but just the flavor of the corn, very different from flour tortilla, really satisfying. There's a bit of grit in there, a different texture. It's just really lovely. So folks, this is the time when you really should be looking away if you're hungry at all. That's where I'm going to pull it together. So a little bit of salsa sauce there. I'll separately put up a recipe for that one, but that's just really good. Roasted cumin, tomatoes, jalapenos, blended together, reduced down over a low heat. That's just a brilliant salsa. And I've got some chicken coming on there, chicken strips or cubes, if you may. They're also just lightly grilled with some cumin and some red and yellow peppers, a capsicum there with some onion in there, and then just a little bit of cheddar. I would have liked to grate it, but all I had was some slices in the fridge. So a little bit of cheddar, fold over, and you see there's a little crack on the side there, but that tortilla is really holding its shape quite well, and you can easily work with it and fold it over. Then back onto the same pan, just gonna let that heat permeate through. Cheese will melt, flip it onto its other side, and then ready to serve. So I'm serving that with a bit of guacamole that I made on the side. Happy to share that recipe, but it's pretty straightforward as well. So some guacamole, a little bit of more salsa. There you have it. Absolutely finger-licking good. Please do try it.